No, but just no on the just advertise like
Oh, like an artist.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started today. Thank you all for coming. And if you haven't been here before, welcome to the archives. I'm Tyler. And today we have Catharine Melin-Moser with us. She will be presenting on her book, When Montana Outraced the East, and the research that she did. And we have that available for purchase in our bookstore here. It's $34.95. And Kathy has some available here too, but she is only able to take cash. So if you have cash, it's probably better to give her the cash than go to our store. But if you need to use a card, we can always run that through the store. And we only have 9 more copies of these, at least here. So if they run out, we can always take account of how many people want to buy some and then order more. But anyway, so When Montana Outraced the East retrieves the largely forgotten late 19th century golden age of the Montana Thoroughbred industry, when Montana horses won some of the biggest prizes in American horse racing. Confounding national sportswriters and threatening to reshape the balance of power within America's oldest sport. Catharine Melin-Moser recreates the thrilling era when, through the shrewd foresight, hustle, and luck that had made them millionaires, Montana entrepreneurs made a lasting mark on American horse racing. In telling their story, her book restores a significant and thoroughly captivating chapter to American Thoroughbred racing history. Again, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to my presentation of When Montana Outraced the East. It will examine late 19th century thoroughbred breeding and horse racing in Montana and its contribution and influence to American horse racing. This is my first book, but I've been freelancing for magazines since 2000. One highlight of my freelance work was going out to a Montana ranch at Choteau and petting a grandson of Secretariat. I grew up riding quarter horses, but I've always loved the thoroughbreds. From my research that included combing through 19th century newspapers, occasionally I'd come across a snippet talking about a Montana thoroughbred that had won a big eastern race. And then one day in 2011, it dawned on me that I had found a fascinating story in Montana history. And it so happened at that time, I was peer reviewing an article for the Montana Historical Society on jerkline freighting. And one day when I finished up a telephone conversation about the peer review with editor Molly Holtz, I screwed up my courage and told Molly that I had discovered amazing Montana thoroughbreds. And she was intrigued, and she asked me to write an article on the subject, which I did, and that was titled In the Winner Circle, and it was published in winter of 2014. And that became the foundation of my book. Let's see here. Montana's grass, generally known as bunch grass, is the foundation from which the story of thoroughbred horses and early frontiersmen is built. The early frontiersmen reacted to the expanse of grass covering every foothill, valley, and bench. It's fair to say that 19th century thoroughbred breeding in Montana was owed to the native grass. According to legend, Papoose, the thoroughbred Kentucky horse, was stolen as a colt from the Mullen Road Travelers by an unspecified native tribe in 1858 or 59. Frontiersman Malcolm Clark likely acquired ownership of Billy Bay through his pagan in-laws. Clark sold Billy Bay to Mrs. Virginia Slade of Virginia City, and it was on the back of Billy Bay that Virginia Slade made her desperate but futile ride to save the life of her husband, Jack Slade, gunslinger and murderer, and hanged by Virginia City vigilantes in 1864. Oh, sorry, missed one. Caribou was the Kentucky bred, an old veteran of the race course, having fought many hard battles, and imported to Montana by frontiersman Charles Williams. The Helena Daily Herald reported that Peekaboo had been named by a little girl and described the filly as a chestnut and her face marked with a white star and crooked stripe. In the 1880s, Montana frontiersmen turned millionaires Noah Armstrong, Samuel Larrabee, and Marcus Daly turned from speculation in valuable minerals to speculation in valuable horses. They hypothesized that Montana's native bunchgrass, mountain air, and high altitude would produce thoroughbred dynamos. Traditional horse racing circles in the East and South laughed at the very idea and called it the various madness. They were certain that thoroughbred horses from out of Montana would be stumpy, undersized, and slow-footed, and some even predicted dwarfs as the outcome. Our first frontiersman turned thoroughbred breeder is Noah Armstrong. Born in Canada, he arrived in the Idaho Territory in 1863. In 1874, he was working several silver lodes in the Pioneer Mountains, and he constructed a racetrack in his company town of Glendale. In 1875, Noah founded Hecla Consolidated Mining Company and amassed his fortune in silver mining. Noah purchased a ranch in the Jefferson Valley near Twin Bridges. He named the outfit Doncaster Ranch for his standard-bred stallion, described as a splendid black. Noah himself designed the barn. The ground floor housed a 20-foot circular track for exercising and training his thoroughbreds. He spent thousands of dollars stocking the grand barn with well-bred and expensive horses. The barn still stands today at Twin Bridges. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is honored in the Montana Cowboy Hall of Fame. Spokane is Montana's most famous thoroughbred. He was Illinois bred, and from the language of the Spokane tribe, Spokane means children of the sun. In the spring of 1887, cowboy Edwin Edgehill walked Spokane 28 miles from the Doncaster Ranch to the depot in Dillon. At Memphis, Tennessee, Spokane received his formal training. In 1888, he raced with modest success, and in 1889, Noah and Spokane went to Churchill Downs for a run at the 14th Kentucky Derby. Spokane and Noah were from the land of the teepee and tomahawk, and they garnered a lot of press for this, but sports writers were swooning over Proctor Knott, the Derby favorite. As a 2-year-old in 1888, Proctor Knott won the Futurity Stakes. This was the richest horse race in America at the time. The purse was valued at around $41,000, which is more than $1 million today. The colt's owner was a Kentuckian, Sam Bryant, who went around touting his colt as the greatest horse to ever look through a bridle. Spokane joined Proctor Knott and 5 other fiery 3-year-olds at Churchill Downs. Early in the race, it wasn't even close. At halfway, Proctor Knott led Spokane by 5 lengths. Spokane's jockey urged faster, and Spokane mounted an explosion of speed. Stride for stride and head for head, Spokane and Proctor Knott pounded down the home stretch. 25,000 spectators screamed themselves hoarse. At the finish, Spokane outbobbed Proctor Knott by a flaming nostril. That was how one sports writer described the margin by which Spokane defeated Proctor Knott. Even more painful to the Proctor Knott faithful, Spokane won the Derby in record time. In the words of a San Francisco correspondent, the result was almost sickening to the vast throng of spectators. Most of them would have rather seen Spokane break his neck than break the record and take the Derby from Proctor Knott. Noah retired Spokane at the end of the 1890 season. He sold Doncaster Ranch in 1900 and moved to Seattle, where he died in April of 1907. After victory in the Kentucky Derby and victory in 2 more important Eastern races, heavy weight handicaps, injuries, and a grueling race schedule depleted Spokane mentally and physically. He lost his remaining races in 1889. He lost all of them in 1890. So what happened to Spokane? One account claims he was returned to Doncaster Ranch and died there. But advertisements for his stud services in Lexington into 1897 debunked that account. Another claim was that he was injured and destroyed near Miles City. On a happier note, that he was retired to a Ennis Ranch, where he died at the ripe age of 30. Like the horse racing historians who came before me, I made repeated attempts to try and figure out what happened to Spokane. In 1880 and 1898, he hobbled up into a Kentucky sales ring and amid laughs sold for $170. 1899 was sold to J. Hume Carter, a New Jersey veterinarian, for $100. 1900 and 1901, Carter and Spokane entered the National Horse Show at Madison Square Garden, where they won money both years. Spokane's extraordinary life ended in 1904. He was then 15 years old, and then one night in November 2019, I found a sentence tucked inside a New Jersey newspaper, and that told me what had happened to Spokane. It stated, "After a long and useful career, the stallion Spokane, owned by Dr. Carter, has passed in his checks." Folklore and pride for Montana's only winner of the Kentucky Derby landed him a berth in the Montana Cowboy Hall of Fame. Our second frontiersman turned thoroughbred breeder is Samuel E. Larrabee. He arrived in Virginia City in July of 1864, dabbled in mining, became a banker in Deer Lodge. And Samuel is my favorite of the three frontiersmen who I profile in my book. He was wise, he was a real gentleman, and he was empathetic to all people and all animals. He was one of the co-founders of the Larrabee Brothers Bank in Deer Lodge. His customers praised the institution as sound and secure as the Rock of Gibraltar. The Larrabee Brothers Bank still stands on Main Street in Deer Lodge. Samuel purchased the first of his thoroughbred horses in 1875, importing them from Kentucky. He established 800-acre Willow Run Stock Farm. He ventured into Eastern horse racing with a partner, Augustine Easton, a Kentuckian. Their racing stable was situated in Lexington, but Samuel directed the operation from Willow Run, where he bred some of the stable's racehorses. This unconventional arrangement raised eyebrows among Eastern and Southern traditionalists, but the Easton and Larrabee thoroughbreds performed brilliantly on Eastern racetracks. Montana Regent was Montana's first turf star. He was bred at Willow Run, foaled in Lexington in 1884. He won big stakes races such as the Hindu, Falsetto, Springbok, and Louisville Cup. He was sold in 1887 to mining millionaire John D. Morrissey for $10,000. So what is a Montana racehorse? In truth, most of Montana's acclaimed thoroughbreds were bred and foaled on Eastern thoroughbred farms or Southern plantations. While birthplace mattered to breeders and owners, the detail was of little interest to the public. When the Butte Daily Post of 1886 relayed the news of Montana Regent winning a big race on an Eastern track, it was no matter that he was foaled and trained in Kentucky. He was the Montana Thoroughbred and the Deer Lodge horse. Poet Scout was a true native son. He was bred and foaled at Willow Run, and at one point during his career, Larrabee and Easton were offered $20,000 for him. He had a half-brother named High Tariff, and from the time they were weaned, they were never separated, and they were stabled in adjoining stalls. Both brothers competed in the 1891 American Derby, a very prestigious Eastern race. High Tariff was challenging for the lead when he suddenly stalled, staggered, and dropped to the track. The race continued, and Poet Scout nearly won it, finishing second. Everyone's attention then shifted back to High Tariff, crumpled and dead on the racetrack. That evening, Poet Scout waited for his brother. He refused to eat. He whinnied all night, all the next day, and for the next several days and nights. According to his grooms, Poet Scout grieved for High Tariff as much as any human being ever grieved the death of a brother. Ben Holiday was Kentucky bred and foaled and named for the flamboyant stagecoach king, Ben Holiday. The horse exemplified the era of the iron horse. He shouldered monstrous weight over long distances. 2 miles wasn't uncommon. And he did it over and over, not only winning, but setting track records. In 1890, Holliday won the municipal handicap, an unprecedented third time. And the New York Times asserted, there were many who, while they believed him to be the best horse, could not see how he could win the same race in 3 years' succession. His feat is unequaled in the history of the turf. In 5 seasons of racing, he finished third or better in 49 of 60 starts. Early in the 20th century, American horse racing adopted a new perspective. Racehorses would rarely make 30 starts in entire careers. Distances became shorter, and the weight they carried became less. Oh, that's this one. At 16.2 hands, Kinley Mack was tall and rangy and covered a lot of ground. He was foaled in California, but raised at Willow Run, where he got into trouble. One day he entangled his legs in a wire fence, and the more that he tried to free himself, the more he ripped up his legs. Being a sweet-tempered horse, Kinley Mack permitted his caregiver to spend weeks, maybe months, treating his legs. In retrospect of his accident, one 19th century horse racing historian said, the wonder was he ever accomplished what he did. The partnership ended, and the New York Sun opined, no one begrudges the victory of a horse owned by Easton and Larrabee, a firm of true sportsmen who spared neither ponies nor money in their efforts to breed winners for the racing establishment, and who have bred more high-class horses than any racing firm in America within the past dozen years, when it is taken into consideration that they own and breed not over 15 mares. Augustine Easton died of pneumonia in February 1914. Samuel followed 2 months later at age 68. He was at work at the Larrabee Brothers Bank when they heard a loud groan and found him at the bottom of the stairs, and then he had passed before the doctors could get there. He was eulogized as the backbone of Deer Lodge. Our third frontiersman turned horse racing tycoon is Marcus Daly. He arrived in New York from Ireland in 1856. After working at the New York City shipyards, he headed to California, where he dug potatoes to give him a grub stake that he used to get to the northern California gold fields. He made his fortune mining copper in Butte, constructed a racetrack in Hamilton, and became president of the Montana Jockey Club. And the timing of Marcus's discovery of a large copper vein in the Anaconda mine was perfect. Demand for copper was on the threshold of skyrocketing as electric power infrastructure was advanced across the world. By the 1880s, the Anaconda Copper Mining Company dominated the Montana economy as well as the North American copper industry. Marcus built a summer retreat called Riverside and a horse nursery called Bitterroot Stock Farm near Hamilton in the Bitterroot Valley. The farm featured multiple stables, a horse hospital, horse bath, resident veterinarian, multiple exercise tracks, and housing for trainers and exercise riders and stable hands. Montana was the first thoroughbred to bring fame to Marcus Daly and the Bitterroot Stock Farm. He was an ugly horse and he was mean. At 2 years old in 1890, Montana made 3 starts and lost all 3. The next year, at age 3, he made 9 starts and lost all 9. Montana, however, embodies the Cinderella story we all love. In 1892, at the Suburban Handicap, the 11-horse field featured America's fastest runners, and Montana managed to keep pace with them into the home stretch, but he trailed the leader by 3 lengths. Jockey snapper Garrison gave Montana a shove with his spurs, and Montana stormed down the track to win the race by a head. Marcus had bet $1,000 on Montana at 40-to-1 odds. But on the day of the race, his winning ticket had burned in a fire, and his bad luck only grew worse. The bookmaker with whom he had made the bet had died. Marcus was out $40,000. But as a friend said, Marcus Daly didn't care about the money. What was important to him was that Montana won the race. Tammany was as much a pet as he was a great racehorse. He played with puppies in a stall and he nuzzled children. And he also thundered down across the Eastern racing establishment in 1891 and in 1892, winning multiple stakes races. In 1893, Tammany and Tennessee-bred Lamplighter were the darlings of American horse racing. Lamplighter from New York and Tammany from Montana ignited a spirited East versus West rivalry. A match race to decide who was greater was set on September 28th at Gutenberg Racetrack in New Jersey. Tammany went to the post slightly favored over Lamplighter. Yet it was Lamplighter springing into the lead and setting the blistering pace. Through the final quarter mile, Tammany was trailing Lamplighter by a length. Jockey snapper Garrison urged Tammany faster, and his swooping strides gobbled up Lamplighter's marginal lead. At the finish, Tammany defeated Lamplighter by more than 3 lengths and set a new track record. On October 5th of 1893, Tammany journeyed from New York back to Bitterroot Stock Farm. No sooner did he get home and he became very sick. The 2 veterinarians who were treating him were perplexed. None of their medicine was working. The Bitterroot boys resorted to unconventional methods, and as one of them told it, after 9 days of nursing, during which he was fed porter, ale, and champagne, Tammany was on the road to recovery. Eastern turf riders covering the 1896 futurity grumbled loudly when Ogden was dropped in their laps virtually overnight with some kid jockey, Frank Doc Tuberville. On Futurity Day at Sheepshead Bay Racetrack in New York, Ogden and 8 more high-voltage 2-year-olds stood ready at the post. The starter's flag twirled, and Ogden and the favorite Ornament sprang ahead of the field with Ornament leading. The crowd jumped and screamed for Ornament before shrieking and wailing when Ogden pulled slightly ahead of their favorite. Doc Tuberville, not wanting to risk anything to chance, touched Ogden once with whip and spur. Ogden wheeled past the finish more than a length ahead of Ornament. The next morning, the New York Journal headline exclaimed, "Ogden the Westerner first. Futurity's great prize taken by a horse of mystery, ridden by a boy of mystery." Scottish Chieftain is my favorite racehorse. After researching each horse extensively, I came to know them so well. Scottish Chieftain was a good racehorse, but he wasn't great. But he was, in my opinion, underappreciated for what he did accomplish. And one of these things was winning the Belmont Stakes. I never found an illustration or a photograph of him, but I got a picture of his sire, Inverness, and his dam, Miss Darabin. And this is a copy of his pedigree card. Marcus Daly had figured on winning the 1897 Belmont Stakes with Ogden, but in the final furlongs of that race, Ogden was nowhere to be seen. Scottish Chieftain, however, was running right there with the leaders. He thundered toward the finish and won the race by a length, and Ogden struggled in last. The next year, Scottish Chieftain raced on the Montana circuit at Butte, Anaconda, and Great Falls. He was then sold at a Bitterroot stock farm sale in 1899. Marcus Daly died November 12, 1900 in New York City. In 1901, 369 of his thoroughbreds were sold at a series of auctions at Madison Square Garden, grossing more than $700,000, this being the richest dispersal of a racing stable in America at the time. James Ben-Eli Hagan was Marcus's longtime business associate and probably his closest friend. Hagan is credited with introducing Marcus to thoroughbred breeding and racing. The three men had an extraordinary reign. The nation's eminent turfmen, turf riders, sporting publications repeated the names of their famed flyers from out of that nowhere in the West. The swift horses won the biggest prizes, shaped historical events, were sources of regional pride, and fodder for local lore. In Montana, on both coasts, and in between, they outraced the East.
Wow, that was very good.
Thank you. Does anybody have